Evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the June meeting of the full legislature. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Chair Sweet.
Here.
Legislator Kelly.
Present.
Legislator Allen.
Here.
Legislator Hadwell.
Present.
Legislator Wilson.
Present.
Legislator Majewski.
Here.
Legislator Pep.
Present.
Legislator Kowalczyk.
Here.
Please stand to salute the flag. Legislator Wilson, would you lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence and to recognize the people who passed since our last meeting. William Motka of Amsterdam passed away on June 20th. Following high school, he enlisted in the U.S. Air Force. Completed basic training at Lackland Air Force Base. He then was reassigned to Amarillo, Texas Air Force Base for technical training and as an aircraft mechanic, maintenance repairman during the Vietnam War, receiving his honorable discharge in 1966. Frederick Purdy of St. Johnsville passed away June 13th. Fred loved his country and served the U.S. Army from 1963 to 1965 as an airborne infantryman and pathfinder with the 1st Cavalry Division while deployed in Vietnam. Robert E. Bob Van Wert of Hagen passed away June 5th. Bob enlisted in the U.S. Air Force and was stationed in Okinawa, Japan, and Bangor, Maine from 1956 to 1960. Robert E. Andrews Jr. of Fort Plain passed away on June 7th. Bob enlisted into the Army and served as a specialist in the Army during the Vietnam War from September 1966 to September 1968. Sherry L. Klein of Fonda passed away June 1st. Sherry worked at the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office in the correctional facility as a cook. Moment of silence, please. Thank you. All right, next thing on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any public comment? Would you like to speak at public comment? You're just in time.
I apologize for being late.
You're fine.
Good evening. So Susan Mallory, Sprakers Road, Sprakers, New York. I was here last month. I gave all of you some information about utility scale clean energy. And I just wanted to revisit it for a moment. And maybe this isn't the proper venue to do it. I don't know. I told you that I'm not involved in politics, so. I wanted to say I've lived here for 31 years. I've owned a small farm. It's in Kanjahari and Root. And I've been really happy to live there. I've chosen to stay here. In February or March of this year, as an adjacent landowner to Flat Creek Solar, which is being proposed by Cordelio Power, I was invited to their informational meeting. Now, it doesn't take a lot of research to understand solar isn't very efficient in upstate New York. I thought it was gonna be a field, you know, what you see up by the college. And I went to this meeting, and it was thousands of acres. And they'll tell you it's gonna help the farmer, or it's gonna be put on wasteland. The property behind mine is probably 2,000 acres of working farmland. And a lot of that is sited. And a lot of the total 4,000 acres is working farmland. I was shocked, and so was everyone else. We thought it was gonna be little, and it's not little. And trying not to be reactive or emotional, I started looking into it. And I find it's not Root and Kanjahari. It's Minden, it's St. Johnsville, it's the town of Florida, it's the town of Glen, it's the town of Palatine, And then I'm going, it's not just me. It didn't bother me when I thought it was gonna be next door or down the road, when it was gonna be right next to me and maybe be detrimental to the value of my property, what I've worked 31 years for, then I was concerned. And now I'm finding, not only is it me, it's all of you. And I have no idea, this is why I'm here. Like I said, maybe it's not the right venue, but when I've talked to the officials in Root and Kanjahari and the attorneys and the assessors, I've talked to some people in Minden, I've been to Palatine. I don't know how much you people talk to each other, and sometimes I wonder if it's not much at all. But be that as it may, I think I'm making my voice clear here tonight. And I'd also like to say that I did reach out to some of you and ask if I could speak to some of you privately at your convenience. Maybe my fears could be assuaged if I had some understanding of how this is being handled. I grew up in Sharon Springs, and Sharon Springs has got a real problem. And I think Montgomery County and all of these towns is gonna have a real problem. After reaching out to people, not a single one called me back. Maybe that's my fault. Maybe the way I reached out wasn't correct. Maybe I was supposed to send a letter or an email. But I'm busy. You guys are all busy. I did what I thought was easiest, so maybe I'm wrong. But anyways, I'm back here tonight. I think I've made my point. I probably won't be back again, but I hope you give it some sincere consideration, not just at a town level. And I'm not talking about a little facility here or something on someone's barn roof. I'm talking about thousands of acres. And if they don't work, what financial impact will it have on our county? And will you want to still live here? Will your family still want to live here? Because I won't. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Hearing none, we have Nick Bosco from CT Mail. Nick, would you like to fill us in on the project at the old courthouse, please?
Sure. Nick Labasco from CT Mail to speak regarding the public defender relocation to the old courthouse. I believe everybody's got a packet from Eric Mead regarding the proposed scope of work and a cost estimate to go along with it. I can put it up on the screen if it's necessary. But as a general summary of the work, given that this is a historical building, we're attempting to treat this with light touches, very topical, all interior renovations at this point. A prior approach did involve an addition on the back for accessibility and access to the second floor. With that removed, we're very much within budget of the funding source that this would be falling underneath. The scope of work, the removals and demolitions are really limited to what appears to be a wood-framed wall and other additions to the space that are not historical in nature and relatively easy to remove. The only significant demolition is likely penetrations through floors for plumbing pipes to provide new accessible restrooms on the second floor and decommissioning of restrooms at the front of the facility that appear to be an issue above the record, storage, leaking, and other concerns. So the approach is to not have those active or part of the project or trying any intensive repairs to that space, but in order to protect the historical documents below, just decommission that area. The new scope of work, and I would reference further into the document set, the A103 sheet, involves approximately 50 to 60% of the second floor be reallocated as office and file storage area for the public defenders. Most of the spaces will be shared spaces, as the employees here are, let's say, transient in nature and not necessarily 5 days a week, 40 hours a week occupying these spaces. A conference room will be included within what is now an open conference room area, but in order to better utilize that space, we're putting offices along the perimeter and pulling a more modest-sized conference room into the center of the space. All in all, the HVAC systems are going to be reused to the fullest extent possible. There is some ventilation and cooling and heating loads for that center conference room area we're going to have to accommodate. Plumbing is really limited to those 2 restrooms on the second floor that we're adding in. And as far as plumbing on the first floor goes, we are rearranging the existing restrooms, so there would be minor retrofitting, but nothing extensive. In order to comply with the accessibility requirements of having the public defender over there, we do need to allocate some first floor areas as a flexible meeting room for public, of anybody with a disability that needs access or consultation with public defender, as well as any public defender employees if either they are disabled or they have a temporary injury that would accommodate having an office space on the first floor as well. That approach is what's helping us to avoid code compliance having to put an entire addition on the back. This is a code path to accommodate accessibility on a floor that is already accessible. As far as schedule goes, given that the majority of the work is light demolition and light construction, we're going to take every effort to make sure product spec materials required for the construction are not long lead items, because March 2025 is much closer than maybe people realize. On the document preparation side, I believe we could be prepared to go out for bid by end of August, month turnaround, and then the contract execution probably puts us at late October, early November as a start date. I believe a 3-month window is appropriate for the scope of work involved, with about a month buffer at the end for those that are in construction. That last month, substantial completion tends to drag out lately, but the goal would be to not worry about it dragging out more than an additional month. The only exception I would say to what I'm talking about is the new windows that have been itemized on here. That would have an impact to the historical significance of the building. We are, for everything we're doing, having a due diligence with SHPO. We're going to submit to them, make sure we're dotting our I's, crossing our T's. If the windows become contentious or potentially a long lead item, my intention would be to itemize that as an alternate to help, one, control costs, but also schedule on the project.
Anyone have any questions? No questions? So just to reiterate, the materials and trims and things, you're gonna make sure that they're all short lead time so that doesn't drag out. The window package would be great as long as it gets approved from SHPO and as long as we can get a vendor to supply those in a timely fashion also.
Yes.
Okay.
Are we looking locally at those?
I think that would be the first thing, yeah, Cass and Keller.
Probably, I don't know if they'll be able to meet the specs because of their vinyl windows, and I don't think vinyl would be historical, right?
It would be tough to get them to approve that.
It'd have to be a wood.
They might, just speaking from past experience, they might say, sorry, you have to restore these windows. You're not allowed to replace them. And in fairness, the back, not original portion of the courthouse, I believe has retrofitted windows installed in it to begin with.
Mhm.
So there's a bit of a leg to stand on that we're not going to be restoring those. Those are vinyl or aluminum. I don't specifically remember off the top of my head. So there's, at least within that portion, there's some flexibility that could allow us.
So but we can separate the window package out of it just so that that doesn't drag the project
Yes.
down. Okay,
Chair,
yes.
do you have approval for all of the project yet, or just some of the projects yet, and what time frame are you expecting approval for all of it?
SHPO approval for the interior renovations has not been submitted yet. We're still in sort of getting this off the ground stage. Eric brought me in, I think back in late March, early April to start looking at this. The SHPO submission process will take a month or two, but that doesn't stop us from proceeding with preparing for a bid in the process.
So what happens if we go out to bid, bids are accepted, but we don't get approved by SHPO?
We would have to
You can
work
wait.
with them to figure out what's holding that up. My recommendation would maybe be to submit two separate projects to SHPO, the interior renovations and the windows, so that they're not associated with each other. I'm pretty certain that the interior renovations won't be an issue to them. The windows, they're gonna take a hard look at.
So we don't have to wait for SHPO to move forward with bids? Is that something that you would do, or you would go out to bid and get?
Aside from the cost for my services, we can receive bids and reject them all if SHPO is playing hardball, and there's no additional costs incurred on the construction or contractor side of things.
Looks like that's the only phase of it that's potentially hanging in the balance, right? And if it comes down to it, I mean, we don't, want to spend our own money, but it's $100,000, right? So I mean, if, you should plug your ears when we say that, because earmuffs, because we do, want to use all this money and not use our own, but worst case, if that happens, it's,
Pay the engineering and you're done.
yeah, it's more, but even if we have to spend the 100 because it goes beyond it, I could live with that, but I don't know if everybody else could, but
Sure.
we don't want to do that.
Throw a monkey wrench into something like this. Say we show you a different site and say, with the same type of concept that you're doing, how long would it be for you to put something together on a different site?
That would be subject to the condition of the other site. And I'll use an example of a short discussion was to put it over in the unoccupied space on the first floor here, potentially. I think a similar approach would be we try to utilize the space to the best of our abilities without significant demolition, because there are structural bearing columns and walls that, from an environmental standpoint, let's say maybe we don't want to go and open that can of worms. I would say a similar time frame for something like that. If we're dealing with a really bad building that would maybe need a little bit of repair work or asbestos abatement or lead paint remediation, that could stretch out both the design and the construction phases of work.
But on your end, if you walked into a building within the next week or so, how long would it take you guys to put some kind of a plan together?
Not a month and a half, which is what I think it would take to get the old courthouse ready to go out for bid. If we're talking a brand new building, we would probably need at least a couple more weeks, if not a month, to kind of wrap our head around it. We've already been on site, we've evaluated the building, we've looked at the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems within there, what we need to do as far as that goes. We've confirmed no structural issues with what we're planning to do. So there is some backstepping we would have to do.
Because I'm not, personally, I am not in favor of putting this project or this group in this building. I mean, I think this is the main building for the county, and to put them there, I think it should be used differently. And I think we have other spaces that could be used for something. And there was another space that I mentioned to Brian today that I think would fit the purpose of this real well, and it wouldn't be under any historical, wouldn't be under anything else along those lines. And I think it's another option to go, to look at. But I know that we're also looking at that March deadline, and again, I'm not 100% sure that if we have the contracts done and everything done, how hard fast the state's gonna be on that March. I mean, but again,
And
So what are you talking about, so we all know about it?
I'm talking about the old office of the DPW building. I mean, the garage, we knew the garage was no good, and all that behind there is no good, but the office building up front is a relatively a good building. The second floor is pretty much a big, wide open space, and would be no different than this, putting everybody upstairs, putting a meeting room downstairs, and if it floods, but most of the flooding down there was caused by the floor drains in all the garage. Most of the water came up through the floor. I mean, there's other things that would need to be looked at, but I mean, here's a building that we're doing a phase 1 on the environmental. We're going to do a phase 2. Are we ever going to be able to get rid of it? Maybe this would be a good place to put them. But I mean,
The flood zone doesn't scare, I mean, maybe the drain's backed up, but we had 2 500-year floods within 6 years. I mean, that was kind of a contributor to that.
the old courthouse is right across the street.
And it didn't happen. Yeah.
And they would be using the same parking lot, except they'd walk north for their office, or they'd walk south. I mean, it just, it was just an idea.
No, I was just curious.
I'm looking at your estimate here, and I think we should have an add alternate to put an elevator in it. If you're gonna put this kind of money in this building, bring it into the next century, this building's iconic in this town, the looks of it. They use it on the web page and everything, but I think we should have an add alternate for an elevator to make for the next 100 years.
Well, the problem with that, Dan, is that we're in a time crunch as far as March.
That's why I said add alternate,
Okay.
okay? So he can design the space, he could design the hoistway.
Mm-hmm.
You could do it in phase 2 next year if we're worried about dollars.
Mm-hmm.
But the master plan should have an elevator in it.
it's sort of baked into what we're planning to do, but more as a future phase, that we're not going to go through the design and permitting process for the elevator, because again, I almost have to do a third submission to SHPO for that, since ideally the most efficient way would be to put an elevator on the outside of the building, not try and cut through the floors of the existing to put it in. But the arrangement of the second floor, and specifically the first floor, is set up that we could do an addition on the back for both a staircase and an elevator in the future, if the funding and permission through SHPO would allow for that. And the space that the public defender would go into, we're talking about relocation of 2 employees and cutting down of maybe 10 to 15 linear feet of new wall to open up a new lobby for where the elevator access point would be.
Okay.
Any further questions or discussion on this? All right. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the next thing on the agenda is communications. Do we have any communications?
No.
I need approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Edwell, Kelly. Discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Need an acceptance of budgetary transfers.
A second?
Kelly Hedwell. Discussion? Hearing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Alright, excuse you.
Sorry.
That's true.
Next is acceptance of the 2024 June procurement record. Legislator Wilson, Legislator Kelly. Oh. No link?
Because it didn't get received, it's in your binder.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Abstained? Any old business? Hearing none, we'll move right into the resolutions. Resolution 168, a resolution supporting the Montgomery County Consolidated Funding Application, Chucknanun Creek Trail Extension Plan. Sponsors were Wilson and Pep. Discussion. Hearing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Passed.
Resolution 169, resolution supporting the Montgomery County Consolidated Funding Application, Kanjahari Creek and Public Park. Sponsors were Hedwell Jr. and Kowalczyk. Discussion. Hearing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Passed.
Resolution 170, resolution accepting additional American Rescue Plan Act funding. Sponsors were Wilson and Pep. Discussion. Hearing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Passed.
Resolution 171, resolution approving the retirement days credited monthly for part-time and full-time elected officials and appointed officials. Sponsors were Kelly and Pep. Discussion. Hearing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Passed.
Resolution 172, resolution authorizing county executive to sign agreement, continuation of the CLEO agreement between the County of Montgomery and the counties of Fulton and Schoharie. Sponsors were Sweet and Kelly. Discussion. Hearing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Passed.
Resolution 173, resolution directing county attorney to file deeds. Sponsors were Pep and Wilson. Discussion. Hearing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Passed.
Resolution 174, resolution setting the date of the public hearing on FMCC's proposed 2024-2025 operating budget. Sponsors were Pep and Sweet. Discussion. Hearing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Passed.
Resolution 175, resolution authorizing county executive to enter into a contract with Catalyst. Sponsors were Kowalczyk and Pep. Discussion. Hearing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Passed.
Resolution 176, resolution amending the 2024 operating budget, statewide expansion of Hurl Haring contract, renovations to county facility. Sponsors were Sweet and Pep. Discussion. Hearing none, all's in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Hang on 1 second, please.
Kowalczyk and Kelly. Abstain?
Passed.
Jump, adjusted what? Did that get adjusted?
No.
The
Which one?
1.2 to whatever.
9.75 or 0.975.
Didn't need adjusted. It didn't need to be adjusted.
It didn't, that's the number?
That's the number.
Okay. That's the number, Martin.
That's the number, even though we were told it was 9 something.
So the difference is the 1.2 is the number according to the email this morning from Bill Marcel, and the difference is the engineering and pre-construction work and stuff.
Exact number.
1.2, yeah. Any further? So resolution 177, resolution amending the 2024 operating budget, accepting additional stop DWI high visibility engagement campaign crackdown funds. Sponsors were Kelly and Pep. Discussion. Hearing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Passed.
Resolution 178, resolution correcting the 2024 town and county tax roll, Town of Charleston. Sponsors were Wilson and Majewski. Discussion. Hearing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Passed.
And resolution 179 is a resolution approving the abstract of audited claims. Sponsors were Pep and Kowalczyk. Discussion. Hearing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Passed.
Anything under other? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Kelly and Kowalczyk. 6:30.